Wrestling fans around the corner, around the world, I'm Dan Marty.
Bill Eadie, Axe Demolition.
We have been waiting for this guy so long to get him back in the studio individually. I hope you guys are loving it as much as I am, because a brand new Wrestling Insiders is now.
Tickets are on sale now for our 20th anniversary Back to the 80s and 90s WrestleFest Birthday Bash, Saturday, November the 13th at Memorial Hall in Melrose, Massachusetts.
This is Mick Foley.
This is Harley Race.
This is Shelton Benjamin.
This is Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff.
This is the Monster Abyss.
And this is Daniel Bryan.
This is JBL, and you're watching the MWF.
Be there live.
Wrestling fans, welcome back to another Wrestling Insiders. We're getting messages from our great fans from coast to coast. Our good friend Radley Fenner from down in New Zealand sends his hello. Abrian Nelson from Jacksonville, Florida. Oh, we've got friends out in Denver, Colorado, Salt Lake City. They keep sending us these great messages. They're loving the content, Bill. We have our moderating staff online that help me, because the night of the shows, I'm trying to get the word out on social media. We got Slick Rick B up in Maine that's been a mainstay with us. And there's another one, but I don't know if I trust her, Bill. Sometimes she's Tina. Sometimes she's Tania. Sometimes she's Smokey. Sometimes I call her by the wrong name and I call her Stony. She's a woman of mystery. But you know what? We thank you for your help in moderating these shows, because without you guys, we don't have a show. I think sometimes there are folks in wrestling, in the wrestling business, that they seem to forget that if they're not good to the wrestling fans and respect the wrestling fans, there's not much of an industry.
Oh no, there isn't. It's based on fan participation, viewing, attending, writing. So it's without the fans, why have wrestling?
Or if you don't treat them with respect or appreciate them, there's a lot of people that take wrestling fans for granted, and I think that's horrible.
Well, you know what? A lot of people in the business, unfortunately, think that the fans are not smart, but they've seen many, 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 many more matches than I've ever been involved in. They've seen talent way beyond what I could think of.
Yeah.
So you can't shove trash and garbage to them and say, oh, this is great. They know better.
Welcome to 2021.
Yes.
Look at the ratings decline across the board in almost every promotion.
Exactly.
It's
How do you
sad.
go from 10 million down to less than 1 on some nights?
Go back to, and oh, you know what? Geez, I hate to jump ship, but you know what? It's worth noting. February 5th, 1988, Hulk Hogan and Andre on NBC, 33 million people.
Yeah.
33 million people. Monday Night Raw, you can't even get 2 million to watch in 2021. Even during the Attitude Era, Steve Austin and The Undertaker did over 10 million one night on cable television, which wasn't free network TV. You had to pay to be able to see Austin and Undertaker and those 10 million people. And not only did Austin and Undertaker do 10 million people on Raw, on the other channel, Nitro had wrestling on TNT. So, man, does it sting to see what we have left in 2021. I don't know if you agree with this, Bill, but I think there are more fans that love professional wrestling that don't watch in 2021 that do.
I have to agree with you, and one of the things that verifies it for me is all the virtuals. And then now that things are opening up again, the Fanfests, because they're gravitating to the 80s, 90s wrestlers and not today's wrestlers. So, yeah, it's kind of scary. Who knows what's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years, but I'm a football fan.
Who's your team?
Well, I grew up in Pittsburgh.
Steelers guy?
Steelers
Oh,
guy.
Maria Davis, if you're watching, she's probably getting, she is Miss Pittsburgh Steeler.
And I live in Atlanta, so I try to root for Falcons.
That's your NFC team.
And, but if they had wrestling, I mean, if they had football on, and they do sometimes, Sunday, Monday, and Thursday. But if they had football on every night, like it seems they have wrestling every night, there'd be a lot of nights I wouldn't even care, let alone watch.
You know what I think the problem is, Bill? To me, wrestling was always a weekend thing.
Yeah.
And now there's no wrestling, other than the pay-per-views, there's no wrestling on the weekend anymore. Raw is Monday, NXT Tuesday, AEW Wednesday. Thursday you have that Dark Side of the Ring documentary. You have Impact Wrestling. Friday night is SmackDown. Where's the weekend wrestling?
Well, now you also got the A&E biographies.
And those are Sunday nights too.
So
isn't it funny? You even have the the A&E biographies going head to head with WWE pay-per-views some nights. There's just a lot of content right now.
Well,
and not a lot of it is awe-inspiring.
and from what I've watched occasionally, I have to admit I don't watch that much anymore. It's the same guys. So, how many times can you see the same guy?
52 weeks a year. And not just 52 weeks a year in enhancement matches to try and entice you to go buy a ticket to a live event or to buy a pay-per-view. But since the Monday Night Wars, the Attitude Era, everything is a competitive match. It's star versus star. You know what I mean? And it is so boring and repetitive, where the rosters are so slim nowadays, especially where WWE continues to cut and cut and cut. And I know they're a publicly traded company. They have to keep the eye on the bottom dollar, but it has hurt the quality and the variety of the shows.
Well, if they had a match here in Melrose.
Saturday night, November the 13th, Memorial Hall, save the date.
Yes. And they had it on TV, and somebody says, I know a friend of mine went to an event in Richmond. It was $75 per ticket for him and his wife, and they took their child. $75. Or free TV?
Right, which are you going to pick? The average ticket price to a WWE event before Corona was $45. The average price. I know when I took him to WrestleMania, I think those seats, they're probably $300 each they would have gone for if we were to buy them. I couldn't afford to take him to that. Or either that, we would have been upstairs in the nosebleeds, you know.
Well, you can go to Disney World the whole day.
Yeah.
If you go to...
Don't even get him started.
If you go to,
we'll be there next month.
If you go to SeaWorld, that's 2 days for $60.
Right, yeah.
So,
I mean, it really is, you know, maybe...
I mean, people will go if it's something they want to see. Mm-hmm. But if you're just putting matches together...
And it shows. You know, I have to say this. Do you know what I really enjoy more than anything about the live event experience, again, pre-corona? I still love the house shows.
Yeah.
I love to go to a show, 4, maybe 5 matches, intermission, 3 matches, go home. All wrestling, no skits, no vignettes, almost no promos. It reminds me of almost going to a wrestling show the way I used to go to. The TV tapings, I mean... most of the time they're maddening because there's much more BS than there is actual in-ring content. And it's funny because, again, it seems like we're knocking WWE in 2021, but at the same time, I think you maybe have the most athletic group of athletes they've ever had at one time.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I mean, I don't think we're knocking them. I think we're just telling the truth.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't watch the product, but when I do, I'm not impressed, and I can understand why AEW beat NXT. NXT production, to me, was like a small-time community production.
Right. It's
It
like
was
almost
good.
like an indie with
It was
better
good.
production values.
Yeah, it was good, but it didn't match the other WWE events.
No, not even close.
So-
and to be honest, I don't think it was meant to.
But why would you do that? Why would you take a night from your viewership and not give them the best product?
I think they were trying to break AEW's balls before they had a chance to really get a following and a...
Well, that's probably true.
I mean, why else would you pick the same night at the same night at the same time to run the show. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It was in a deliberate attack on
Yeah.
them. And, you know, interesting. Do you think it, in the grand scheme of things, did it hold AEW back by having NXT launch at the same time they did? AEW now has been alone by the time we're taping this, 4 or 5 weeks, I'd say. And, I mean, there's been a little bit of growth, but nothing to write home about. So I don't know if AEW just has a fan base that is AEW loyal, that loves AEW as it is. I don't know how many NXT fans they, quote-unquote, took from NXT not
Right.
being on Wednesday night.
Right.
And I don't think NXT has really benefited by being alone on Tuesday night. I don't think they've taken any diehard, or too many diehard AEW fans, and taken them into the fold on Tuesday. I think both bases kind of had their own fans, and
Yeah.
it was almost like the end of Raw and Nitro. I mean, Vince probably thought, this was in the time when I was around WWF with Ed Cohen, when that sale went through, when they bought out WCW literally for pennies on the dollars for what they could have got.
Yeah.
But, you know, they probably had the expectation that the Raw ratings would be higher than ever, where there was no Nitro anymore. And if you look at the ratings pattern in 2001, it turned into a massive decline.
Yeah.
So you really never know.
Well, I'm just concerned. I mean, I have no dog in the fight. I'm just concerned with the direction that it's projected to going.
I tell you this, since the bell rang at WrestleMania 17, outside of a little bump up when Cena and Batista got hot at the same time, it has pretty much been a downward slope since 2001.
Yeah.
20 years. I'll say this, maybe to compliment WWE, I like their main event picture right now. I think where you have Bobby Lashley as your champion on Raw and Roman Reigns as your champion on SmackDown, you have two guys that at least bring credibility to what you're trying to present. They both look like two guys that can kick ass, and when they get in the ring, they're very good. Bobby, I'm very partial to because he wrestled for us right down the street
Oh,
at
yeah?
that venue. Great human being, a military guy, great athletic amateur background in wrestling. He went into MMA after he left WWE the first time,
Right.
and just what a waste. When he left WWE back in 2007 with his wife over some racial stuff, I guess maybe is the best way to put it. There's a guy that lost, my God, well over 10 years of the prime that he could have been in WWE. He is one of their top guys. Granted, now he's got the belt, he's the champion, but you wouldn't think it by looking at the two of us, but Bobby's 3 or 4 years older than me. He's no spring chicken.
Yeah.
Roman, at the same time, I think is just the perfect package. I know WWE kind of gave him the Cena treatment where he kind of got shoved down people's throats, but I always loved his body of work. And ever since they turned him heel and put him with Heyman, I think they've got the perfect recipe for him
Yeah,
right now.
I think that was a good decision.
Yeah.
Like you said, they were, we mentioned earlier, the fans. The fans have seen so much. They know what they want. They know what's good. You can't tell them this is good when it's not so good. And when they made that switch, it seemed to ignite him a little.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, the funny thing was, I was told by a friend in WWE, they decided to switch the main event at WrestleMania, which originally was just going to be Edge and Roman, to include Daniel Bryan, because they were afraid that to the die-hard type fan that pays the big money to go to WrestleMania, they thought Roman was going to get cheered finally, after years of him getting booed when he was a babyface. So I thought that was just kind of a funny anecdote. But, there's a lot of things in WWE I would change. I think the women being shoved down people's throat has got to the point where it's too much. That might not be the most PC thing to say, but I mean, I look at it like this. July of 2015, there was the big slogan on Twitter, give divas a chance, and so on and so forth. They introduced some of these lovely ladies we have here, Sasha Banks, Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair. They really went balls to the wall with the women. Raw that week had 3.5 million people watch. Now you don't even have 2. Now that's not the only problem with WWE by any stretch of the imagination in 2021. But can you show me any metric that says women's wrestling is helping the cause right now.
Well, you know, another thing that I think that a detriment to them is having the events in front of pictures.
The TV screens, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how would you present wrestling right now with no?
Well, I don't know, but I mean, I think that's one of the factors that have taken the attendance, viewing attendance down. I mean, it would be difficult. I don't know. It's just, and then the scuttlebutt that they're not going to do live events. Is that true?
Well, no. As of we're taping this, when they announced they're going to go back to having live crowds in July for the Money in the Bank weekend. Between July and Labor Day weekend, they're going to have 25 live events with fans.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if I don't think that includes house shows. I think that's probably primarily at this point just going to be TV tapings and pay-per-views. But to me, at least it's a start to show some life.
Oh,
again.
yeah.
You know what
See,
I mean?
I received a text from a good friend of mine, and I said, I don't think that's true. I don't think that they're going to curtail live events. Why would they?
There was a rumor going around that they were going to try and eliminate them altogether. But I tell you this, I think you hurt the talent, not only in the wallet, but as far as the learning experience and the improvement goes by having them wrestle once a week.
You hurt the company in the wallet.
Yeah, that too. Well, you know what? Honestly, as coronavirus hit, the house shows really were turning into a money loser.
Were
The
they?
attendance was tanking so bad. So, but I think at the same time, even if the house shows between the merchandise and the ticket sales, you break even, I think you need to do them for the benefit of the talent being going out to learn how to work in front of live people. I think having them work straight TV matches that are timed once a week, you're not creating workers, you're creating almost
Actors.
There you go.
Actors.
There you go. And that's not a good thing by any stretch of the imagination. But what do you think of the women wrestling? I don't think you and I have ever talked about that. Do you think it's too much? Do you think it's too little? I know my opinion. I would, if they really think that there's so much value to these women, between all of their TV platforms, their own network that they have now, YouTube, however you want to do it, I would take all the women and I would give them their own 1 hour show.
I agree. That was my answer.
Oh, sorry.
But, you know, years ago, they had Glow.
Yeah.
They had their women's group. There was 2 or 3 Japanese companies exclusively.
Right, they did very well.
Exclusively women.
Yeah. That Dream Slam event back in the 90s was almost like a women's WrestleMania over
You know,
in
they've
Japan.
got so, like you just said, they've got so many possibilities. Why wouldn't they have one night of women's wrestling?
Why can't there just be a show with just men's wrestling?
Yes.
And I'm not trying to be disrespectful towards the hardworking ladies, but I don't know. Again, I know you don't watch a heck of a lot of it, but I enjoy Asuka. I think she's very good because I think she gets in there and works like one of the boys.
Yeah.
I think Ric Flair's daughter is very good, but for the majority of them, when I see them come out, I just want to change the channel and watch a baseball game or a basketball
maybe
game.
that's what's happening.
I think it is. You know, what's funny is, I don't know if you're familiar with all the releases that took place after WrestleMania.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about cold. Usually they wait a couple of weeks. I don't even think the ring
Well,
was
that's-
taken down yet in Tampa.
That's traditional. That happens.
I don't think it was ever this quick, though. I still think the ring was up in Tampa as they were making the announcements.
I agree with that, but that's a yearly event.
Oh, every year, yeah.
That's
it's
like a
tradition almost.
harvesting.
Yeah.
And inside, it's sort of like let's see who we can get this year out of left field. And sometimes it backfires. Sometimes the people are begging for their job. And sometimes they're cost saving. Sometimes it's salary reduction. It's planned.
Oh, sure.
So
I thought it was funny. Mickey James did an interview. I don't know if you're familiar with her.
Yeah, I know Mickey.
After she was released, she, almost like what I just said, she had pushed for the same concept, an all-women show. And they said to her, look, we tried to do the Women's Evolution pay-per-view. It was the least watched pay-per-view in the history of the company. Just so they could try and say they had a sellout, they were selling tickets for $5 and $3 in the New York area to try and fill the place. They said point blank to her, the women don't make us any money. But if the women aren't making them any money, why are they taking up sometimes a quarter or a third of the TV shows every week if no one wants to see them? That's the part I don't understand. Do they really want to be PC that bad so they can go to these corporate functions or whatever and say, look at what we're doing for these women? Well, look at what they're doing for these women, but they're making the wrestling fans not want to watch.
Well, I would take your idea and have a women's division show exclusively, and then have an all men's show, and then a mixture show. They've got enough. My God, they got 7 days a week television.
Raw is tough, and Monday Night Raw is the mainstream of the company. But why not, where it's 3 hours, why not take the first, or especially the third hour, because the third hour is usually where it tanks ratings-wise, make that last hour an all-women's hour.
Let me ask you, you got 7 days a week. How many days of wrestling on? 6?
If you include the pay-per-views, yeah. Saturday is really the only naked
Why do you
day of the
need
week.
3 hours?
USA likes the ratings. Even if they're tanking, it's still one of the highest rated shows on cable TV.
Well, they're paying them, so.
Big money. $5 million a week.
Are the other shows 3 hours as well?
No, Raw's the only one that's 3. NXT is 2, SmackDown is 2, AEW Dynamite is 2. I tell you know what I think the perfect presentation ever for a wrestling TV show was? And granted, it wasn't weekly, but if you go back to Saturday night's main event, those 90-minute shows that always left you wanting more and left you excited and got you pumped up. 3 hours is a chore sometimes to watch. 2 hours is a chore to watch sometimes. I always liked that 90-minute Saturday night's main event. I remember when I was a little guy, I would go to bed, and then after the news was over, my parents would come and shrug me on the shoulder, and they'd wake me up, and I'd go and sit in their bedroom, and I'd watch Saturday night's main event on their TV while they fell asleep, and then I'd go to bed. I thought that was the perfect presentation for a wrestling show. Maybe it's because I'm looking back at it as a kid, and most people, when they look back at it as a kid, they think that was the best of the best. But, I mean, look at the ratings that show did on NBC. It was popular enough to take Saturday Night Live off of TV every 6 weeks, you know?
Right.
That was a hot program.
Well, it's evident that something has to be changed.
Big time.
So, but we're talking about it, and when they're looking in from up above, they're saying, those two guys don't know what they're talking about. We know best.
I think the fans may agree with us. I don't know about Stanford.
Oh, the fans do. I think the fans do, because I hear it all the time.
You live it. When every convention you go to, every show you go to.
Here's a situation. I work with juvenile offenders. When I first started working there 10 or 12 years ago, when some of the officers and other teachers realized who I was and what I did before, they were always talking wrestling. This is 10, 12 years ago. The last 5 or 6 years, there's one rabid fan. This guy loves wrestling. He probably watches 7 nights a week, all the hours. From hundreds of people talking to me to one guy talking to me. That's where it's got now. The other 99 don't give a damn because it's too much. Now, if it was good 10 years ago and would have stayed that way, they'd still be watching. And that's not against the guys. You can't blame the talent.
No, they're some of the hardest working people on the planet with what they go out there and do.
But it's some of the things that they're doing from the...
It's what they're instructed to do is the problem.
Yeah.
And I bet when you have these conversations, are they talking about Kevin Owens and Drew McIntyre, or are they talking about Randy Savage? Are they talking about Andre? Are they talking about some of the other legends back there? Miss Elizabeth, I
They're
see.
not talking about any of the guys currently.
Yeah, and that's a big problem.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about most of those guys. I mentioned Roman and Bobby as guys that stand out, but as far as what they have to feed them as challenges
Yeah.
for their championships, it's slim pickings.
And
Slim
you
pickings.
were correct with Lashley. When Lashley first hit the scene,
Oh,
if they'd have gone with that and run with it, but there again,
if Cena was 1, Bobby could have been 1B.
yeah.
There's your Raw guy, there's your SmackDown
Yeah.
guy.
But for some reason, somebody sitting back in the office watching a monitor says, I think this guy's going to get too hot. He needs to be squashed a little bit.
Well, with Bobby, like I said, it was more of a racial issue, I guess is the best way to
Yeah.
put it. And for him to leave for that long, my God, you're not talking about a year or two. You're talking about he left in 2007.
Yeah.
And he didn't return until 2000 and, gosh, what year is it now? 21? My God. He's been back, whatever year it was in New Orleans, 11 years I think he was gone. Now that's a long time. Imagine what they could have done with that man over that period of time. I
Yep.
mean, the real, not only is in the ring, but I mentioned his real life background and what he does for the community out in Denver. He has kind of a karate, MMA, wrestling type school. He does a lot for the kids in that city. I mean, he's someone you want to represent you.
Yeah.
He's like, I mean, granted, has he done the amount of Make-A-Wish greetings that John Cena has? No, but no one else on the planet has. But he's just a genuinely good human being
Yeah.
that you'd want to be part of your company.
But everybody-
The fact that they didn't go out of there, and again, I hate to knock WWE, where they've been so good to me, where they've been good to that little guy in the, well, not so little guy in the booth, but, you know, they really should have gone out of their way to try and mend fences with him. Because he's exactly the type of person you want to represent your company. Not bring him back when he's 42 years old. You know what I mean? They just completely and utterly missed the boat on that. But it is what it is. You can't change history. The fact is that he looks so good at the age of 44, I think says a lot about, you know, how well he's gone out of his way to keep himself in shape.
Yep.
And again, with Roman, I mean, I never disliked Roman. I know a lot of the fan base, males that were around my age, started to hate him again because they felt he was being shoved down their throat. But I always enjoyed his body of work. His promos sometimes were a little lacking. You know, when they went with the crazy idea, well, we'll make him more handsome if we put blue contact lenses in his eyes. I mean, come on. Come on, Bill. Is it just us?
No, it's not just, well, look at the ratings.
Look at the millions of people that have vanished into thin air like Houdini.
It's not just us. We're not we're not the two
God.
smartest people in it.
But we're not the dumbest, I guess,
No.
is the way.
I don't think I am, and I have to check with my wife.
Well, you know what, Sue is a wise lady. But again, folks, I want to take a brief time out. We're talking 2021 here. We want to get back into the thick of things. The theme of this episode, our friend out in Salt Lake City, Victor Langhauser, sent along some great questions for this episode. But again, we want to thank our good friends over at Red Rose for feeding us so well. Noel Salon at Noel Salon in Malden, Massachusetts. If they could take this poor dilapidated guy and make him look halfway decent to sit with a gentleman like this, imagine what they can do for you. Again, they're just a hop, skip, and a jump away from the Malden Center Tea Stop. NoelSalon.com. Right now, we're going to take a brief time out. When we come back, we're going to talk about what you guys have been craving. 1987. You know what happened that year. Stand by.
Tickets are on sale now for our 20th anniversary Back to the 80s and 90s WrestleFest Birthday Bash, Saturday, November the 13th at Memorial Hall in Melrose, Massachusetts.
Wrestling fans, I'm Dan Marty.
And this is the man of the hour, Leo Rush.
It's all over BostonWrestling.com and our social media. But Leo, brother, they got to check out some of this merch.
They got to.
Check it out, fans, right now, available on eBay.
The Undisputed Era kicked ass and took no prisoners in WWE NXT. Now you can own this limited edition collector's autographed art print personally signed by Adam Cole, Roderick Strong, Kyle O'Reilly, and Bobby Fish. Also signed by the original artist, Rob Schamberger, one of only 50 made direct from our friends at WWE. Help keep wrestling legends working. Get this awesome collectible for your collection now. Wrestling fans, especially here in the Boston area, we want to thank our great friends at Red Rose for their support for all of our charitable endeavors and programming efforts. Red Rose is 2 years young and extremely thankful for all the support they've had from our neighbors here in Melrose and beyond for an amazing first 2 years. Red Rose thanks Melrose and all of the first responders who have fought the good fight and have never given up hope during these unprecedented times. We did it together. Follow Red Rose on Facebook for their anniversary special, facebook.com/Red Rose Melrose. You'll be glad you did. Open until 2 a.m. Red Rose will give you fresh, piping hot, mouth-watering food that'll put an ear-to-ear smile on even the toughest critic's face. Check out their full menu online at redrosema.com or give them a call, 781-620-1889.
Bill, we were having so much fun, we missed all the time cues they were trying to give us in the back. But now I want to get into, again, the theme that everyone has talked about. I mentioned our friend Victor Langhauser out in Salt Lake City wanted to talk about it. 1987, the first TV taping in 1987, January the 5th, the debut of Axe and Smash Demolition with luscious Johnny Valiant. Tell me, how did we go in 1986 from you becoming the super machine to this transition into Demolition? Tell us the story of how Demolition came to be. Well, I need to know.
Randy Culley had approached me, and he said he had talked to Vince about this character and wanted to know if I'd be interested. And then Vince had approached me and said he thought it was a good idea if I wanted to try it. He wasn't going to force me to do it. So Randy had a variety of combinations, fur boots and a mask that you wore in the ring, different types of costumes. So we tweaked it a little bit, got rid of the fur boots, got the heavy duty bike boots, put paint on instead of the mask. The original, he had sort of like a monkey man gimmick. Didn't call it the monkey man, but that's what it appeared to be.
You were going to be like monkeys?
Well, I wasn't.
He was going to be like a monkey.
Yeah. And then he got the idea basically from the movie. Or was it Thunderdome or Thunder?
Thunderdome? Okay.
The Mel Gibson movie.
Mad Max?
Mad Max.
Okay.
With the hockey mask. But when he took off the hockey mask, we'd go into the ring with the hockey mask. When he took off the hockey mask, it had sort of like a fur mask, like a monkey face, which I wasn't really keen on. So I said, why don't we just do paint? And we changed the outfits to the guy, the Mad Max guy. He had that strapped outfit with the metallic items in it. So it was a process of about, I would say, 4 to 6 weeks of tweaking it, and eliminating, and trying to input and then eliminating. So we got the idea, presented it to Vince as the Demolition characters that the people know. And Vince liked it right away. And I liked it. So we had our first event. It was either in the Meadowlands.
Yes, it was.
Two matches. The Meadowlands the first night, and we went out, and there was a good reaction from the people.
Yeah, I remember it on TV.
But when Randy took his mask off, people recognized him as one of the Moondogs. Why not? He was in there for 3 or 4 years as their top tag team.
Right, yeah.
But they didn't know who I was, because I hadn't been in there other than being a superstar.
Other than with the hood, yeah.
Yeah. So the reaction I heard when we went out was good, but it sort of fizzled. The reaction to the match was okay. The next night, I think it was Hershey. Same thing. So I remember after I was scheduled to go to Japan in 2 weeks anyway. I had already had a commitment to Inoki. So we got back to the dress room, and I told Randy, I said, Randy, this character's going to work. But unfortunately, and this was tough for me because Randy was my friend, it's not going to work with you. It's going to work with somebody. Me, somebody else, 2 other guys, but they know you. And he says, oh, I know that now. He says, after 2 days, he said, he was smart enough to pick it up. He knew it. And I told Vince, I said, Vince, the character's going to work. He says, oh, I know it's going to work. He says, what if we get you a new partner? I said, well, you have to clear it with Randy because he's came up with probably 75% of the character. He said, I already talked to Randy and I want to use Randy. That's when he used him as under the mask.
As a shadow.
As the shadow, yeah. So I said, okay. He said, well, I want you to start looking right now. I said, you realize I'm going to Japan in 2 weeks? He said, no, you can't go. He said, you got to change that. I said, Vince, I gave him my word. And I said, all throughout my career, the one thing that I hold in high esteem is if I give someone my word, it's gold. Well, you can't, we can't afford you to go over there. So I said, Vince, put it in this situation. What if I was in Japan and I gave you my word I'd be here? And all of a sudden I called and said I'm not coming because they want me to stay over there. He didn't like it, but he had no out. So I went to Japan, and in the meantime, he had touched base with Barry, and he had also called me, and he had, I want to say, 3 other guys, at least, probably more than that, but I know 3 for sure. They had called me and said, hey, what about using him? What about using him?
Do you remember some of the other candidates?
Yeah, but I don't want to mention them.
Oh, come on.
No.
Why?
I just don't, because they weren't aware of it.
Oh, they didn't even know?
No. And I ixnayed them. And I didn't ixnay them because they were not talented. I said, we just went through the same thing with Randy.
They'd be exposed.
You want me to take this guy who's been working here for 4 years and bring him out as Demolition? It's not going to work. This guy, not going to work. That guy, not going to work. We got to bring somebody in. New. He said, yeah, you're right. But he says, we had these guys here and I thought we could use them. I said, you can use them. I'll go to Japan. Put those 2 guys together and make Demolition. Well, I don't think it's going to work that way.
Now, let me ask you this. When these conversations started with Randy, were you still the Super Machine?
No, I was, yes, I was.
Now, when the Super Machine run came to an end, did you think you were done with WWF for a while?
I was going back to Japan. That's why I'd already made the contract agreement.
So you thought you were done with WWF once the Machine run came to an end?
I only went in as the Machines as a favorite Andre.
Really?
Yeah. I had previously been in there as Superstar. and I didn't enjoy the experience.
We're gonna talk about
Yeah.
that at some point in this series.
So Andre said, we want to try this in New York, and I said, I'll go with you, for you. And when it's done, because I had a standing contract with Inoki. I had 14 weeks a year on his word. Never signed a contract. We shook hands, and all of my years there, the money kept going up. If he said, well, we're going to give you a raise, what better relationship do you need?
Was it good money for those
Oh,
14
Jesus,
weeks?
yeah. Yeah. Very good money.
Better than WWF money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went back to Japan, and then they had contacted Barry. I think they contacted a couple other people. And then when I got back, Vince had asked me to meet with Barry, and I drove up from Atlanta and was going to go visit my daughter anyway. So Barry and I had lunch and talked it over, and then we went from there.
Why did you think Barry was the guy?
Well, I had talked to Ivan, and he said he's willing to learn. He's never been a headache. And we hit it off right away. He seemed like an honest guy, which he is. He seemed like he wanted to learn the business, which he did. And nobody could recognize him. He wasn't in the WWF territory.
New to the company, grew his hair out.
Yeah. So we hit it off right away. And still close friends today.
How did Randy Culley react about almost like in a
Well,
soap opera being recast?
He knew that it wasn't going to
It
work.
was going to be a sinking ship?
So, and I told him, I said, you can do this character. You can be Smash with somebody else, another Axe. And I think he realized that it wasn't going to work. Was it going to be there 6 weeks, 6 months?
Yeah. And they wouldn't do much with them.
No. So,
They wouldn't do much with them.
no.
Did you think maybe there was a way you could possibly tweak the gimmick with him as Smash, whether it be under hoods, whether it be a way just maybe to
No.
disguise his face a little bit? No.
One big factor, Randy never did interviews. He had never done interviews in his career. Always had a manager. And he told me he didn't feel comfortable doing interviews.
Really?
Well, in order to drive your character, you have to be that character.
Right.
You have to project that character
live it.
to the fans. If you don't talk, it's even as much ability and star attraction that Snuka had. He had a heavy hurdle to overcome with his limited interviews.
Verbal ability.
Yeah. You can be less athletic, less dynamic if you have a good interview.
Oh, sure.
It covers up. But if you have the athletic ability, the looks, and the mic skills, what better combination?
Right.
So,
do you think there was any maybe jealousy, resentment from Randy? Or
No,
do you think
no.
he took it as a true pro?
oh, he took it as a true pro, because I bumped into Randy
Whoop.
a number of times at events and signing events. He was happy that we were successful. It's sort of like his baby did good, you know, and he had a chance, and I don't know how long the Shadows worked, and then he took the character and tweaked it a little bit and did Independence as Detroit Demolition.
Oh, okay.
So he worked it too.
And I think they had a pretty good, not that it compared to what you guys were making in WWF, but they had a pretty hot run down in Memphis with
Yeah.
Lawler and Jeff Jarrett for a while
Yeah.
in the early 90s. I think that might have been like a Pro Wrestling Illustrated Feud of the Year type thing. It
Yeah.
got so hot. So it's not like his career completely died, but I'm sure he would have rather have been getting those
Oh, yeah.
Demolition paychecks compared to the Shadow
Yeah, I agree.
But, I mean, you found a tremendous guy in Barry. He described in his interview in Tampa how it kind of came to be, how I don't know if he told you the story, but how Jim Crockett kind of went back on his word on a big tour.
Yeah, I know that part.
You know, and he said, you know what, he couldn't respect the man anymore if he lied to his face. He attempted to correct it as a gentleman, and Crockett wasn't interested in correcting it. And then through, I think it was Ricky Steamboat and the Hepners, they kind of put him in touch with Vince. I don't know if that was at the time, maybe when you were in Japan.
Yes.
But they brought Barry up to Connecticut. They went through the book of all the different Smash ideas, and then they kind of said, well, we're going to touch base with Bill about it and see what he thinks. And it was just perfection. Let me ask you this. Do you think out of anyone else that was mentioned to you, do you think you could have had the success that you had with Barry?
No.
And why is that?
Because the other guys were recognizable. It would be taken, and it wasn't, it would be taken, which heel? Bob Orton.
Right.
And making him smash.
Smash, and everyone would know,
It's Bob Orton.
I know you said there were a couple of other names that they mentioned to you that maybe weren't as visible. Was there anyone else that they threw out there that wasn't a WWE known commodity?
No.
No, that wasn't. So
No.
Barry was really the only one.
Yeah.
That was a non-WWE WWF commodity.
You have to remember at the time, if you weren't in WWF, you didn't exist.
Right. To them, yeah.
Yeah.
To them. Well, I tell you, fans, this is how the Odyssey began. We basically made it through one TV taping. We had Salvatore Bellomo and Mario Mancini lay down for the Randy Culley Smash and Axe with Luscious Johnny V at ringside. So much more to come. We have talked so much on this episode. We blew through yet another one. Had a great time. Let us know what you thought about the episode. On the right side of the screen, we have the premier chat box going. Let us know your thoughts on the episode, what you think about today's current WWE, what you thought about Demolition. If you remember those original 2 matches that aired on TV with Randy Culley when he was Smash, I actually do remember it because I remember the face change when Barry debuted. Even as a little guy, I knew something was going on. Almost like when you see 2 different Santas at the mall, I guess. Let us know what you think of that. We're going to talk much, much more about that in the future. If you're not with us during the premiere, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. We want to know what you guys think of tonight's episode. Of course, if you're live with us, that super chat button, the gray little dollar sign, it is open for business. Don't forget to tip the bartender. Many ways you can help the show by getting the word out, folks. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's absolutely free. If you hit the little notification bell, that'll alert you every time we have a new episode. On top of that, social media is on fire right now. Share the link to the video on Facebook, on Twitter, on Reddit, in Facebook wrestling groups, across wrestling websites, the quote-unquote dirt sheets. Let them know about all the great fun we're having here on Wrestling Insiders every week. Plus, we have the eBay store with superstars from every generation of professional wrestling. Every piece of merchandise you purchase helps us keep the lights on. It helps us bring great legends like Bill into the studio. And on top of that, you get an on-air shout-out from one of the legends as our thanks to you. And again, the big one, if you don't want to just be a fan of what we're doing, if you don't just want to be a friend, and if you're with us on a regular basis, you are a friend. If you want to be part of the Boston Wrestling MWF family, head on over to patreon.com/Boston Wrestling, folks. You will have the wrestling time of your life with hundreds of studio shoot interviews. You get early access to the Wrestling Insider talk shows we do here in studio, the studio shoot interview DVD library that's been seen by millions online, millions more on the Howard Stern Show. You get some Patreon exclusives. And again, you, yes you, that handsome individual that looks in the mirror each morning when you're brushing your teeth, getting ready to go to work, wishing you were part of the king of sports, you're helping keep the wrestling greats you love working. Again, that's patreon.com/Boston Wrestling. For my partner in crime, Mr. Bill Eadie, Demolition Axe, the Mass Superstar, and so many more, I can think of hundreds of episodes we're going to get out of this guy at the speed we're moving now because we're all about attention to detail. I am Dan Marty. Thanks to our great help in the booth. Until we speak again, folks, you and yours be well. Stay healthy. Good night.
Thank you for joining us. Please give the video a big thumbs up, leave us a comment, and subscribe to the channel to enjoy more great content. Don't forget, you can help keep wrestling legends working. Check out our eBay store and join the Boston Wrestling family at patreon.com/Boston Wrestling so we can produce more in-depth shoot interviews.